All right, before I button things up with this, the OBS harness on my LS swap, I wanted to just go through it one more time because I think that, I put a lot of work into figuring out this stuff, and I really feel like the information's out there. It's just all wrapped up and convoluted, but I decided that I wanted to utilize my fuse block on the pickup, and I just added fuses. So I figured out how to pull off the back of this and get into it. And if I flip this over, maybe it wants to flip the other way. And then what I did, I can show you here. Let's see here. Yeah, it goes that way. So I added a 40 amp fuse here, and that's to power the relay that I added. So originally this relay was for the AC clutch. I moved the AC clutch relay to where the air relay was that wasn't on my vehicle, so there was a blank spot for that relay. The AC clutch isn't going to require 40 amps just for the clutch, so I think it's fine moving it onto a 20 amp relay. And then that freed up a big relay, a 40 amp relay, to add in some extra fuses. So this relay gets fused power to protect the relay, really, because then it goes to all of these ones that I have marked in red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It actually goes directly to 5. And then 5, 3, 4, and 5 are a solid piece. So they're all connected. And they jump to 1 and 2, and they jump to 6 and 7, which 6 and 7 then jump to 8 and 9. Now 6 through 9 I'm not actually using. I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I just filled up the fuse block. And then 1 and 2 I'm going to use, and 3, 4, 5 I'm going to use. I'm also going to use, there's, if I can zoom in on here, there's ignition, ECM ignition, and ECM battery right here. So that's, this one right here is 12 volts from the battery fuse, goes to the ECM. This one is utilized in the vehicle for a different purpose. These are going to be ECMs, these two 10 amp fuses. This whole row of 15 amp fuses I'll be utilizing. These 4 spots here are just holding spares for now. I don't plan on using them. If I flip it over to show you what I physically did, it's a mess in here right now. When you really want to utilize the real estate, things get a little crowded, but essentially this is the output from the relay. So technically it's the input. This is pin 30, and this is the feed from here. And this is going to pin 87. So 87 jumps to 30 when this 12 volt wire, that originally I believe that wire gave power to the, you can see it's coming in from the harness. I think that gave power to the transmission, and it comes through the firewall. So 12 volts ignition turns this relay on, powers up these other fuses. Moving down the line. And also I'm just gonna use my fuel pump relay on here. So fuel pump relay is right here. So fuel pump relay is still this black one here. So that's unchanged. Really, it was just taking from the LS harness this wire, which I didn't want this thick of a gauge of a wire, but it's what was in there, so that's what I used. And then I've got all my scraps. I know it looks like a big mess. Yes, it is. Here's one. When you're pulling these out of the back of the, they're used in a lot of spots, but really what you want to look for is if it has nothing on the back or the sides. See, I can see right through the tip. There's plenty of them that, let's see if I have any. I think I threw them all out. that have these blinders up at the front, and it makes it so that they can only be used on relays. They can't be used for the fuse. But you pop this out and you can add things. Pop this out here for the relays circuits, and pop this one out for the main fuses. And these main fuses get power from this bar that you put 12 volts on this nut here from the battery, and it just gets 12 volts directly from the battery and has a bunch of fused circuits that are fed out and into the cab and to other places. So enough about the fuse block. Mine is kind of ugly, and I'm a little bummed I didn't have the terminals to do new crimps, so I had to reuse the ones from the harness. I didn't want to wait for them to come, and that means that like this orange wire is actually a pink, these oranges are pink, this black is a pink. There's a lot of things that should be pink that are different colors because I just had to use what I had. Moving down the harness, I'm not going to go through all of it. I'll just show you guys what it all looks like. I did connect I got all my grounds coming out at the same spot here. So I eventually will splice these down into a single ground and put a fresh terminal on it so that it's one ground for this entire harness. And then moving along, I didn't really change anything past here. This goes to your AC accumulator, the low side switch. I have two lights under the hood. One is just on whenever you pop it. The other one is you can switch it on and off. And then this goes through into the cab here. But coming back to this branch point, my transmission neutral safety switch and rangefinder had so much glue on them that and somebody else had damaged those beforehand, so I got new ones, and I just need new pins. I didn't want to use the pigtails that they came with, so I'm waiting for some new pins. I could splice, but I would rather just wait for the pins because it's not really an urgent thing. I can repin this under the hood of the vehicle or on the ground. But essentially from this branch, these four were the gear indicators. These are not the original ones. The original ones come through the firewall on the 96 and the 97, I believe the 98 as well, maybe some other years. And they never go over to there. They come from the transmission, come up to this, and just they go to the body. They never go to the ECM. I wanted the LS harness to have this information. So what I did is I took the original wires, and instead of having them come and dangle down here, and they were really ugly and damaged, it ends up being that the distance from this junction point to the end here, if you fold it back, will get you back to the fuse block. So I folded them back, and that's 4 of these are those. And then the other 4 are the new harnesses. The LS harness had a range selector as well, also covered in glue. And that's what these 4 pins are right here. Those are from the LS harness, and they just go from here to here. And the way that I'm going to make it so that they can talk with each other is I'll take both yellows, crimp them together, and then both blacks, both grays, and both whites. And then on the LS harness, I have wires that go to the pins that I took those wires out of. And so I'll end up being able to get all of the information across just using a 4-pin connector. So other than that, weeded out everything I don't need, kept the things that I did. I'm keeping the ABS, my cruise control, and, 4-wheel drive, things like that. But this bundle right here is a lot of wires that go over to the other harness. More than most people, because I have the 4 for the gear selector gear range indicator. So that's 4 extra wires. It looks like 8, but it's really only 4. Most people have a 12-volt power wire and an ignition switch to turn on their harness. But me, I'm doing my fuse block here, so I have 7 fused ignitions, and 5 of which are on one relay, 2 of which are on the native relay, and then I have 12 volts battery. So that's 8 pins. So I'm gonna use one of my 8 slot terminals for this bundle. I've got my crank cable, and I haven't decided how I want to connect the crank cable, but the starter solenoid wire, one way or another I'll connect it. Then there's these 11 wires. These 11 wires, it's actually 12 wires, but these 2 are gonna share a spot. Because these are both 4K VSS. One of them is for the cruise/radio, and the other one is for the speedometer. So this one goes to the speedo, and then this one, because I want my cruise control to work, I'll need that connected as well. And then other things that I kept, tack, obviously, the high-low switch so that the LS computer can take that into accommodation. I added a tow haul wire, which I didn't have, so I just have gave myself a lot of leash. I just wrapped it around my C100 for now because he kept wanting to wrap into things. But I guess I can go through and show you guys what I used. So I used Pinouts that I got online. These ones, I don't remember what website I got them from. And then these are the LT1 swap. You got to be careful though, because if you want your AC to work, he just has you take everything out. I grounded this wire. This is the C2 red pin 55 cycling switch. I just grounded that. AC request signal I pulled out and have that cross-talking. Secondary high pressure switch you just pull out. You don't have to worry about it. What else? There's a couple other things that he pulls out that I wanted to keep. Going here, these are the 14 wires that I thought that I would need out of the OBS pickup, but I ended up not needing 4x4 engaged, cruise on, or voltage indicator is the battery light. I'm just not going to run it. So those 3 are out. So then that only leaves 11 on this plug. And then instead of 6, and crank is separate. So this is back when I was not planning on changing the fuse block. I was trying to do it with just the native fuses, but I really just was a little worried that it wasn't going to be enough. So I switched it, and then the range indicator. So that's how I'm doing my OBS 96 harness. I think it was a lot of work to make it all fit in the fuse block, but I think it's worth it because I don't like having 2 fuse blocks under the hood, and I'd rather utilize this to its fullness. If this wasn't enough, that would be fine. If I end up needing more power, what I'll have to do is have a relay outside of the fuse block that sends in power for these 4 extra fuses back here that I'm not using. But I don't think that's going to be necessary. The fuel pump has its own relay, and I've got more than enough power to run the harness, so I think I'm okay. But yeah, that's the harness. So, and then as far as tools that I used, cannot speak highly enough about making sure you get shrink tubing that has adhesive in it. Make sure it's got adhesive in it. That stuff works great. I'm planning on using these Deutsch connectors. I haven't put them in yet, so I'll see how those go. I got these 8-pin ones. I bought a new range indicator and neutral safety switch set of plugs. And yeah, I would just try and get some new terminals, and then new terminals. And it's frustrating because these ones are slightly different, so they're not all the same. I think that these would work though. But you need 280 and you need 150 for your neutral safety switch and range indicator. 280 for the fuse block. It's all 280. Except for this giant one, which I know you can buy them, but I just used the one off of the harness. Just grabbed it. And yeah. So time to make my plugs, and then really this thing is ready to get loom on it. And then the other thing is obviously I don't want all these plugs right next to each other, so I'll have the 4-prong for the range indicator back here. As I come out about here will be the 12-way with the 11 terminals being used for all that information, and then I'll have my 8-way out around where these wires end, so it'll be staggered across. But yeah, I'll put a video together once it's all in, hopefully running smoothly. Only other thing I'll say is there was wires for the wires that I thought that I might need that I ended up being like, I don't need those. Like here's one of them. I think that this is for the battery light, so I'm just burying them in the harness. And I just put some shrink tubing on the freshly cut end so that it doesn't short with anything. And I'll just wrap that in, and did the same with the cruise on, the 4x4 engaged. And then there was one other wire that I did that with. It was 12-volt ignition feed to the computer, I believe. But I wasn't sure if it was from the computer because it splices in, and I think it powers it. I think it not powers, but turns on the ABS. And just in case I ended up needing it, I left it long and just folded it into the harness. So I think 4 wires folded into the harness that I might not ever need, but would rather have them be there than try and figure out a way to get them back on. So yeah, lots of work, but I really like that I'm not running 2 fuse blocks. I think I'd rather have the 8-way connection than to have a second fuse block. So hopefully next video is the harness is all loomed up and pretty.